Are you satisfied with how it's ended up, perhaps, turned out?
What we wanted to do was to make sure we come up with more of a governance guideline than a regulatory guideline. That is why we didn't call this the AI regulatory guidelines.
Is there any specific reason why the governance currently says, no, we will not look at amending it right now? How is it going to be tracked? Whether amendments
amendment has to happen. Amendment has to happen. See, if you remember, the first thing we want to set up is this interministerial governance body.
Right.
That is the first thing that has to happen.
How are we addressing things like copyright law or use of personal data for by the algos?
Whatever is feedback that we wanted to give to the copyright people, it has gone to the DPIIT committee from us.
Got it.
They will have to take a decision on how they are going to incorporate it.
Talking about the global picture, is it that you must have studied various laws globally?
Yeah.
So where do you think you had more leaning towards the drafting committee?
So we wanted to be more closer to that kind of a model in some sense, but certainly not leave the thing up to the completely to the marketplace.
Welcome to a new episode of Digital Playbooks. In today's episode, we take a deeper look at the India AI Governance Guidelines, the recently released framework for AI in India that balances innovation on one side and safety and accountability on the other. India has taken a pragmatic approach to development of AI, combining it with voluntary measures to be taken by the users, but also leaning on the digital public infrastructure of the country and taking a regulatory and techno-legal framework. To tell us more about the India AI Governance Guidelines, we have with us Ravindran, a professor at IIT Madras and the chairman of the drafting committee that put together the governance document. So thank you so much for joining us today, sir. As with the AI governance guidelines now out, the idea here was to kind of go deeper into some of the nuances and understand from someone who's been part of the drafting committee to get your views also, sir. And maybe you would like to start off with the overall vision with which the process began. And are you satisfied with how it's ended up, perhaps, turned out?
Well, all of these things there's always a compromise involved, but I'm more than happy with how things turned out. Right? So I'll tell you where we started. So the idea was, people were always asking about AI regulations, right? But in a country like India, right, so there is so much benefit that we can still get from AI, right? While the Western nations might not see quite the need for wider adoption of AI, and they are happy to just look at the more risk, even the futuristic risk of what these AI systems will bring, and therefore would try to avoid that by putting in more regulation, more strong regulation. But what we wanted to do was to make sure we come up with more of a governance guidelines than a regulatory guidelines. That is why we didn't call this the AI regulatory guidelines. If you look at it, the name itself is governance, which as much about enabling responsible AI adoption as it is about avoiding or mitigating risks through AI adoption. Right. So we tried to strike a balance. It's hard. Right. We tried to strike a balance where we wanted to make sure that we don't overly stifle regulations by looking at unrealistic commitments and from companies, which will stop them from going for wider, more innovative approach to adopting AI. So that was the goal which we started off. From the very beginning, it was very clear. I mean, the government, our minister, even our PM has been talking about how we don't want to regulate things heavily, right? And certainly our MeitY minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, has said this in multiple places. And so has our MeitY secretary, Krishnan, has always talked about how we would like to have more of a lighter regulatory approach. And the focus will be on innovation. And we have tried to stay true to that motivation.
Spoke of regulations. In that context, so why there's any specific reason why the governance currently says, we will not look at amending it right now? How is it going to be tracked? Whether amendments
amendment has to happen. Amendment has to happen. See, if you remember, the first thing we want to set up is this interministerial governance body.
Right.
That is the first thing that has to happen. That is the one that has to initiate. Right now, this committee doesn't have any statutory role. Right? I mean, we were asked to give an advice to the government, and that's what we have done. And the strongest advice, none of what we have said is binding to the government. Right? This is something which was very clearly mentioned by the secretary and the PSA, that what we are doing is not binding on the government. But what the recommendation that we have given very strongly is right away, we need to set up this, interministerial coordination body, right?
Right.
That will task. Now, this body will have a statutory role, right? I mean, so that body will task each of the domain regulators to start their exercise.
Okay, got it.
It's up to that body to.
In
So
that
they are
sense-
not going to. They are not going to pass the regulation because you need the sectoral expertise to do that.
Got it. So in that sense, as you said, the right now, perhaps the existing laws of the country suffice, but the way the pace of change in AI
Exactly.
itself, how will we track it? What's your sense of practically how this is going to happen?
I mean, tracking is going to always be a challenge, right? The technology is going so fast. I mean, getting a new law passed is, several months, if not a year success. Yeah, right? So tracking it just by saying that I'm going to have regulations that are going to get changed every 3 months or every 2 months, it's just not a practical. So what is going to happen is we have suggested setting up 2 new bodies, right? So one is the AI governance group, which consists of multiple ministries, and so that they can go back and tell their sectoral regulators, right, what they should do, and also advise the government at the higher level if new laws need to be considered and drafted and things like that. But we also said there should be a specific technology group, right?
Right.
So we call it the technology TPEC, right? Technology and Policy Expert Committee. That also needs to be set up, and that will also be a permanent body, right? The role of the TPEC is to keep monitoring the technology changes, keep monitoring the policy challenges that are happening, right? And the TPEC will be helped by the different AI safety institutes. In fact, they can actually commission research projects to the AI safety institutes that are being set up in the country, right? They can actually say, hey, look, we really want to understand what this technology is. Can you do a research project on it, right? And give us your report at the third year, and things like that. So they can call upon other, even industry players, right, to in order to understand what's happening with the latest technology and things like that. And they will be giving inputs, both technology and policy inputs, to the governance group. So there's no knee-jerk, no quick fix to this tech. Right? Like I said, A, it is really transformative. It's affecting every sector, and B, it's changing at such a rapid pace. Right? So we cannot have one short solution and be done with it. Right?
So some of the things, I mean, speaking of feedback, some of the things that came up was like, how are we addressing things like copyright law, or use of personal data for by the algos and things like that? I mean, was it the governance is not meant to perhaps go into all of that? What do you think?
No. See, the thing is, the copyright issue, right, is a major issue in itself already, right? So the government has already constituted another committee called the DPIIT.
Mm-hmm.
They have a committee to look into the copyright laws.
Right.
Basically, they've gone ahead, right? We have been telling each sector should revisit their laws, but for the copyright sector, they've already started doing it, right? So we basically have called that out in our recommendation, saying, hey, look, yes, we really need to relook at it, but since the government is already doing an exercise, we don't want to kind of say something in counter. Whatever is feedback that we wanted to give to the copyright team, it has gone to the DPIIT committee from us.
Got it.
They will have to take a decision on how they are going to incorporate it and so on and so forth. And there has also been this report that was made by the government for the on the issue of deepfakes, right?
Okay.
That has also been shared. I think it was in response to a query from the Delhi High Court. So there was a committee that went into this, again, a multi departmental committee that went into this issue of deepfakes. And then their conclusion also mirrors something similar to what we said in the guidelines now, in the sense that at least in the instances that have come to the court so far, in terms of this deepfake use, the existing laws are strong enough to cover that.
Got it.
Right? So the laws fall a little short in, this is my personal opinion, right? Because they rely on the ability to do forensics, to go back to the source of the mimicry or the malicious image generation or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, they are able to do some, video analysis and figure out which video is fake and some kind of a signature of somebody, something. I mean, so that kind of some forensics, digital forensics can be done. So what is happening with this AI systems is that is still being challenged. So so we have to look for some kind of a voluntary commitment from people who enable generations of fake images, to insert signatures, insert watermarks, and so on and so forth, so that we can potentially do this forensics. Right? But again, there is no way to technically enforce it right now, at least
Right.
yet. Right. So it has to come from a voluntary commitment. So in fact, again, there's another criticism that has come out. We have relied a lot on voluntary commitment. See, when you don't have the technological capacity or even the technical tools to enforce the regulations that you want to place, then you have to rely on people voluntarily complying to that. You can say that, hey, these are the things that we really would like you to do, and that will help the society at large, and it will also keep your customer base happy, the government happy. So go ahead and do it. But right now, if I make it compulsory, I might not be able to do it.
Got it, sir. Right. So, with the as you said about the individual regulatory authorities kind of stepping up to the task, in practically, are you convinced that it will not stifle in innovation when so many moving parts kind of coming together to ensure that we balance innovation and safety, the coordinated effort in a sense?
Yeah. So that is why the governance group is being created, right? So that is the interministerial coordination group that happens, right? So there, one of the things that we have actually said that that group should be watching out for is that the regulations don't become contradictory. They enable frequent discussions among the regulatory bodies to ensure that there is in fact, sometimes the regulations might have to be contradictory. For example, this is always a thing I give, right? In healthcare, gender is a very important variable. And I need to use gender to make decisions as to, okay, what kind of medicine can I give to this person? What disease this person could potentially have? Because some genders have higher, affinity for certain kinds of diseases and things like that. Maybe drugs don't work the same way based on for men and women. Some pathway differences could be there. So gender is a very important thing. But when it comes to finance, when I want to make some loan decisions and things like that, I might actually say, hey, no, look, you can't use gender as a
Right.
Right. So this will actually be contradictory regulations, right? In some sense. So that's the nature of the beast. So sometimes you have to be contradictory. So and likewise, the technology is so broad. Right? I mean, there are vision technology, there are speech technology, there are text-related technologies, and then there are things that look on tabular data and so on and so forth. Right? Yeah. All of these, there is no point in saying that I'm going to come up with this one regulatory framework that will fit everything. It's just going to become an omnibus regulation. Yeah. So the impact of it should be looked at it from a sectoral point of view. And again, it's going to be hard to ensure that, you don't, come up with something that's mutually contradictory. In some cases, you might have to do it. Where it is not a necessity, you might want to make it easier, right? But then you're conflating two things. And you're saying that, hey, by having contradictory regulatory approaches in different sectors, are you not going to stifle innovation, right? Mm-hmm. So innovation in what? So the AI that I'm building to solve certain problems in the banking sector might not be the same AI that I'm building to solve problems in the school education. Right. So I might have to use different technologies, different data sets, different training methodologies, different delivery mechanisms, and so on and so forth. So as long as I have a clarity on how I have to do it for the school sector, right? There is enough room for thousands of companies, thousands of innovations to bloom just in that sector. But individually, there is a lot of room in each of these sectors for us to grow and innovate, especially in India, right? So we have a lot of need for these kinds of new innovations, and that is one of the reasons we didn't want to have an overarching guideline that, without looking into the individual sectors' requirements, that would stifle innovation.
Yes,
correct. Right? So we wanted to make sure that we do go down to the sectors and let them manage.
Right. And global thing, talking about the global picture, is it that you must have studied various laws globally? Yeah. So where do you think you had more leaning towards the drafting committee? What was emerging, or you wanted a bit of everything?
We wanted a bit of everything, right? So we wanted a bit of everything. So, for example, the EU has been very, very prescriptive and have put in significant regulations. Right? So one of the challenges there has been for smaller players to comply with that. Right? So there is always this criticism that stifled innovation, like the strong regulatory framework. So basically, the smaller players kind of thrived more in the US and in Canada and other places, not in Europe. Right? But then if you go to the US side, right? The US was basically saying everything is, self-regulation. The industry will manage itself and so on and so forth. And we didn't want to go completely that way. Of course,
Right.
US also looks at sectoral regulators in a few sectors. I mean, US is not a very highly regulated marketplace anyway. So
Yeah.
they are looking at for certain critical sectors, they want to make sure that sectoral regulators play their role. But by and large, they were expecting the AI developers to take care of the responsibility piece. So we wanted to be more closer to that kind of a model in some sense, but certainly not leave the thing up to the completely to the marketplace. That is why we have called out explicitly the sectoral regulators in the various sectors have to step up and then have to make sure that their rules are up to speed. And we have also encouraged the rapid development of technological solutions for us to help move from voluntary compliance into more technically monitored, like maybe a techno-legal kind of a setting, right? So that we have recommended that. I don't think we are there yet, right? I mean, people keep talking about the availability of these solutions and other things in the market, but I don't think there is something that is enforceable. That certainly can't do things at scale that we want to do.
Sure.
But we have called for moving in that direction. So a lot of investment needs to go into the AI safety institutes, so that we build these tools for India, right? So that we can fight this.
So within the short-term recommendations, what do you think that will perhaps move the fastest? Are you hopeful that it should?
The AI governance group has to be set up first. So our entire thing hinges on that happening, right? But having said that, so the capacity building pillar, right? So there is this infrastructure pillar, infrastructure and capacity pillar, right? So the India AI mission has already started doing several things that we are recommending in the infrastructure pillar, right? So they have started, kind of empaneling GPU vendors, and so they are making them accessible to researchers and startups at a lower rate. So that has started. I mean, that of course has to go at a much larger scale, right? So we have some 38,000 GPUs, but seriously, that's not enough. Right? So for us, 38,000 sounds big, but that's like 1/10 of what Elon Musk alone has. Right? So, but we have to really go much faster than that. But they have started this already. So that is off the ground. The data generation efforts are off the ground. Building India's own foundation models, that effort is off the ground now, right? The sovereign model building, I think there are some 12 or 15 projects that have already been sanctioned by MeitY to looking at this sovereign model building. And so that many of the infrastructure piece is already kicked off. And likewise in capacity building, right? So there are a lot of, scholarships and various AI programs that have been started. And then there's a lot of training programs that the government is now enabling for IAS, like all the civil service officers and so on and so forth. I think the CAG is going through they're starting a new AI program for the central auditors. Like that, so each of these governmental sectors where they feel strongly,
Right, sir.
AI awareness should be there. So that has already started a pace. So some of the things which can be done, without the governance body coming in place has happened. But the true impact of some of the recommendations will come in once we have the AI governance group in place. And I think the government also realizes that. I think we should hopefully get a announcement for that.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.